In the hallway of Beryl Bainbridge's house in the north of London is a stuffed water buffalo. She bought him on a whim in her hometown of Liverpool, and didn't realise he would be too big to manoeuvre any further into the house. So he stood there for years, blocking the passage, the straw stuffing bursting out of him. His name is Eric, and her grandchildren like to sit on him. Throughout the house are life-size statues of saints, military uniforms draped over chairs, antiques and bric-a-brac. The walls are covered with photographs of the writer in a clinch with celebrities, of family and friends, and of the Pope. She is drawn towards the past, and in one sense at least, she is living in it. The new, the now, holds little appeal for her. Beryl Bainbridge was born in 1934. Her father was a bankrupt and a depressive, and there were huge rows between him and her mother. Beryl worked as an actress until 1960, when she left the theatre to have a baby and to write. She is divorced and has 3 children, and now lives alone. Her career as a writer can be traced to her childhood, when, as a young girl, she embarked on a story about an old sea dog called Cherry Blossom Bill, who kept his rum supply in his wooden leg. She is the author of 16 novels, 2 travel books, and 5 plays for television. She has been shortlisted 4 times for the Booker Prize and has won the Guardian Fiction Prize with The Dressmaker and the Whitbread Prize for Fiction with Injury Time and Every Man for Himself. Several of her books have been adapted for film. Her most recent novel is Master Georgie, which is set during the Crimean War. Increasingly, she is regarded as one of our greatest living novelists. I thought we'd start by asking you about your early career as a writer, starting at the age of 8, I believe, when you were imitating Robert Louis Stevenson and Dickens.
Yeah, no, I was lucky, you see, because my mother, she was encouraging, and you didn't go out in those days. Nobody went out, well, our lot didn't go out to play, in case she bumped into somebody who wasn't nice. I had wireless on a lot, but not telly, no telly, so it wasn't just me. I mean, all the girls I knew wrote all sorts of things, except I think I was doing something different. I mean, I was really wanting to write about my parents, but...
Why did you want to write about your parents?
Well, just to make sense of something that had happened in the past. You know, my dad was a bankrupt, and there was all sort of hidden tensions that nobody was told about. It was all about money, I suppose. It was all horrible. So that's what I wanted to do. I wasn't interested in writing little stories. I really actually wanted to write books, you know, sort of with a cover on them and illustrations and you know, it had to be like a book.
And you would do it all? You would do the writing and the illustrations of the book, yes?
Yes.
Because you have said that, you know, you didn't want to waste a good idea on a short story.
No, I still think that. And I think when I began doing short stories, not many of them, I've only ever done them for commissions for magazines or something. When I started, a short story was something like, 2,000 to 3,000 words, no more than that. Whereas somebody afterwards told me that a short story, Conrad's Heart of Darkness, was a short story. I didn't know that.
Well, most of your novels are about the length of Heart of Darkness.
Exactly what they were.
Were you a bookish child, though? Did you feel, though, that at the age of 8 this would become the career that you were going to adopt?
No, I never felt that I would do it. I loved books. I used to collect books very early age. Didn't always read them. Again, it was the look of them that I liked. I liked the old one.
And was it the adventure stories that you liked to read then? Because it seems that subsequently you've begun to work on adventure stories, you know? If we take Every Man for Himself, for example, is a good old-fashioned adventure story on one level.
No, all I ever wanted to do at all was to write about my childhood. That's all that was ever interested me. I didn't want to do fiction, and I've never really done fiction. I've had a plot in the middle, but everything on the outside of it is actually the way it was, or more or less. I've distorted it a bit, but it's not fiction. And the only reason for going on to say sort of adventure stories in the last ones, with, you know, vaguely historical ones, is because I'd used up everything about my childhood. There's nothing left to write about.
It is amazing, though, that, you know, at such an early age you were willing and ready to explore yourself, because usually children are exploring the bounds of their imagination, and you were really doing your own therapy, I suppose.
In a way, you're right. But you see, I'd query what you say about imagination. I don't think there's such a thing as imagination, or imagination anyway, is the things that happen to you in childhood. It's, the things you see. You're not born with imagination. It just flows in from outside. So I really was, in a sense, I was still exploring my imagination. I was trying to make sense of why things were the way they were. I mean, I was very show-offy and boisterous. My nickname at school was Basher as a child, because I fought. Basher Bainbridge, because I fought. I could fisty fight. That didn't go down terribly well. I didn't fight girls. I mean, I only fought boys. But that was because it was very hostile at home. Never physical violence, ever, but verbally. And it was...
In the house, a kind of bickering violence?
More than bickering, I mean, shouting violence, followed by enormously 3-month sulks and silences. My mother used to go to the local station with a library book, because they always had fires in the station waiting rooms. She would go, and that was her evening. She would go and sit in the station waiting room, pretending to meet a train, And my father would sit in the dark with the wireless on, listening to things like Saturday Night Theatre, always in the dark. And if he was coming to the end of the sulks, then I'd sit with him in the dark and listen.
It sounds like a kind of manic depression, your father had.
Well, if one had realised those things at the time. Fortunately, I did, before he died. He died when I was about 21, 22, and round about 18, I began to see his side of it. So we were more or less friends by then. We made it up, or I made it up. I realised he couldn't help it.
But now you published, at least subsequently you've published a novel that you did write when you were 13. This one, Filthy Lucre, which is quite an amazing feat for somebody of that age to have done. I mean, did you go and polish it up to publish it now?
Absolutely not. The only thing was, I think they've changed the spelling. I'm not sure, because I can spell, but I'm lazy about it. No, nothing was polished up at all. But don't forget, by the time I was 13, I had been writing quite a long time, so I did know about beginnings and middles and endings.
Therefore, when you left school, what was in your mind? Were you still writing even then as a hobby in your spare time? Could you look at other writers' careers and say, well, this is something I could think about doing? Or did your family background seem so remote from the possibility of being a writer that it was something you couldn't actually imagine doing?
No, in actual fact, when I was round about that time, I sent off to 2 places. One was Chapman and Hall, and the others was Faber's. The first one wrote back a very nice letter saying that, it showed great promise, but perhaps I ought to, wait a few years and keep going. After that, I sort of forgot, because I then was sent off to a ballet school in Tring, which was supposed to be a drama school, but it wasn't. So my parents, when you think that my father was a bankrupt and not allowed to earn any money, I mean, it's an amazing feat to send me off to this posh boarding school. But I was there a year, and then I went straight to the Liverpool Playhouse as an ASM. So I didn't do any writing, but once at the Playhouse, the amazing thing was that all the actors, good actors, had come back from the war, it's 1949, and to relearn their trade. And, they gave you book lists, they told you what to read, and you went to the art gallery to look at paintings, and so it was like going to university.
It seems an amazingly rich early experience as well, wasn't it?
Yes,
I mean, and you have managed to wonderfully delve into it for your novels.
Yes.
Do you look back now and think, how lucky I was to have such a strange family upbringing, to have this amazing teenage life, and wonder what would happen to a modern novelist now? Are they going to be able to get that kind of colour of experience in the late end of the 20th century?
You're absolutely right. I've always said that to be a writer, you need a somewhat problematic background, childhood. It's essential. I mean, when you think that probably the only reason Dickens ever wrote was because he was so furious that his mother didn't think it was terrible that he was plucked out of school and shoved in the blacking factory. To have tension is a jolly good thing. And no, I suppose, no, you see, I went down to London at the age of 16 and a half. At one point, I was brought back. But, well, I sort of ran away, but one was safe, sort of safe. You couldn't do it now. I mean, my parents were upset and didn't want me to do it and came after me. But, you know, at 18, 19, I was living in London on my own in a room, and you could do it then. It was an utterly different time.
If we go back to the creative process, where do your ideas for your books come from? What makes you think, oh, I've got the germ of a book here?
Well, in the early ones, well, okay, so let's say Harriet Said, which is the very first one written, not published but written. I wanted to write about my actual childhood in Formby, which is just off the coast from Liverpool, and a strange man that I met, and observations about Liverpool and about childhood. That's all, and the seashore. And so I began it and discovered, when I'd done a quarter of it, that it was very lyrical and absolutely wonderful, but there was no damn plot. There was no, so what? What was it going towards?
Where was it going?
So very early on, in that particular one, there was the case of the two girls in New Zealand who murdered their mother. I didn't read the case, but I just pinched that plot, which is maybe why nobody would take that book, because what I'd done was to do real life of my own and stuck a real life thing in the middle of it, which came out pretty sinister in the end. So it wasn't published then.
But the starting of a novel, how do you go about that? Do you need the first sentence? Do you have to have a sentence that you can live with for quite a long time, say, right, I'm away now, I'm cranked up, or do you start with a title beyond the idea?
Well, sometimes the title comes long before anything else, because I quite like titles. But no, the first sentence, unless the first sentence is right, I can't go on to any other. Sometimes in desperation, I go to the bookcase and I just open a book at random. You know, you just grab anything there, open it, and then put the book away and start. I like endings better than beginnings. So 4 or 5 times I've done what you could almost call a short story and just cut it in half. So that you get the beginning, and then it's repeated at the end, and the bit in between is just the flashback.
It sounds like musical phrasing rather than...
Well, and it's also, there's this awful problem of who's telling the story, who and why are they telling it? I mean, why the hell are they telling it?
It's quite often the small practical things that can go awry, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's tone. I mean, I never can quite understand the tone of a book. I don't know even what it really means, but I know that occupies me tremendously when I'm starting a book.
Yeah, and do you know your own tone? I mean, how would you
really
describe it?
No, I don't know what it is till I've done about when I've done about 4 pages, and to get 4 pages, I write about 48 pages. But to get the 4 pages, by the time you've got an actual 4 typed sheets, and you've read it over and over so often, because I read everything aloud over and over and over, and every night. So if I've done 15 pages, I read 15 pages at night. If I've done 82 pages, I read 82 pages aloud at night, every night.
Yeah.
It goes on and on and on. And by the time you've done those 4 pages at the beginning and read them aloud and aloud and aloud, you suddenly, because you know it so well, you suddenly think you've got the tone.
Yes. So
then you can actually go off then. You can just about get moving. But it goes in fits and starts, you sort of... It's a great help, I find, to write down on a piece of paper or in a notebook, to divide it up into how many... what I do, I love doing this bit of... for instance, the next book I'm going to start July the 1st. Yes. So I tell myself, of course I won't, but I tell myself I will. And then I add up how many days in the month, each month. I've got to hand it in by the end of March. right? So you knock out a fortnight for Christmas shopping and that. You knock out 2 weeks in August. And you take a few Sundays out, but only a few. So then you end up, let's say you end up with 96 pages. And if I set the word processor to do 58 down and 15 across, then I've got so many thousand words, you know. So then I divide that by how many so-called chapters you might have. So that's me, and then I write down under that what'll happen in each chapter, and to do that I'll think of anything that's happened to me in the past, nothing in the present, or you know, but always some incident I remember from the past, or that fits with the story.
You're successfully de-glamorising the process of writing.
Well, am I?
I think it would take Euclid to actually compute how to write a book on this basis.
No. Well, I find it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it any other way.
Do you not feel that at some point you would like a book with a nice heft of 700 pages?
Yes, but I couldn't do it. I'd always... Well, anyway, you see, I write it within a strict thing of time because of the way I write, or the way my work thingy, so-called work. So I can't much, for the sake of my health, go beyond about 4.5 months, otherwise I'd be dead.
Well, I wondered about that. I mean, you know, psychologically, physically, what does that take out of you when you're working on a book? I mean, people underestimate the physical strain, for example, of writing a book.
Well, I don't, you see, say I've got me 4 pages, so then my work would be, my day would be, to get up at 6, to write till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, to come down and doze on the sofa, watch the soaps, have a fried egg in between, watch the soaps, and probably doze again till the 10 o'clock news. And then after the 10 o'clock news, go upstairs and work till about 3 in the morning. Then get alarm call for 6 in the morning again. And do that just
for the 4.5 months.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal work rate, really, by any standards.
Well, I don't seem to be able to do it any other way. You see, I've tried. I don't understand people who write for 3.5 hours in the morning and then, you know, do other things, because I'd feel you'd lose the book you were doing.
You lose its momentum.
Yes.
And you'd lose being...
Well, being so close to it that you were... that it went on naturally. Yes. Because I hate being obvious in a book, and sometimes you have to read my book several times, because I'll put something in page 4 deliberately that won't mean anything till page 30. Now, if I did that and then had a day off, or only wrote for 3 hours, I'd never remember what I'd done on page 4. So it's that sort of thing.
When you are working at these stretches and you're immersed in a book, can you take any interruptions? Do you work in silence? Do you have music playing on the background? Do you take the phone off the hook?
No, I never answer. I never answer the telephone. I have an answering machine, which I sometimes come down and listen to because of the children. You know, in case something's gone wrong with the children. But no, I don't go out or have any interruptions. And I did want to listen to music, but I find it distracts me, so I can't. So.
And you write on a word processor, you were saying?
Now, yes.
What did you do in the early days? You write it with a pencil or a pen, with a piece of paper? In
the early days, pen and paper, and I had good handwriting then. I could write. Now I've got a sort of a literate scrawl. Then I had a marvellous typewriter. It belonged to a Chinaman. Sit up and beg one. I wrote about 6 books on this typewriter, but then suddenly the day came when they don't mend typewriters anymore. So it's upstairs unmended forever. So once or twice somebody's turned up out the blue and said, yes, they know somebody, but it only works for about... Because there's all this thumping. It's interesting, this fact about, to use a typewriter, or an old typewriter, you thump.
Yeah.
And that gives you head time to write. So getting into a word processor was terribly difficult, because you have to breathe on it and the letter shoots out.
You didn't have the rhythm of the typing as well, and the clatter. Because that would give you quite a lot of noise.
Exactly.
Word processors are silent.
I know, they're silent. But, and also I hate the look of modern things, so I keep it at the very top of the house, you see.
Why do you hate the look of modern things?
I hate modern things. I just don't like the look of them. I think ugly, you know. I think I hide the telly behind thingies. I just don't like it.
What happens when your book goes out into the ether then? Do you do as some writers do and disappear for a month and not read any of your notices, or are you concerned about how you'll be reviewed?
Oh, yes. But you see, I've been awfully lucky. I've always had fantastic reviews, more or less, you know. Very rarely got a stinking review. Oh, no, I just get the papers immediately. No, when I finished a book, there's that lovely time when you've finished it, and then it goes off to the publisher, and then you wait about 48 hours for a phone call, and thinking, oh Christ, is it any good? So
Yeah.
I'm not confident on whether I've got it right, and then I have a very good bath. No, before the bath, I clean the house.
Because it hasn't been cleaned for 4.5 months.
Well, no, I have a clean. It's not quite fair, but I feel things have got all messy, and so I sort of clean the house. I put things away. I make lists and things. Then I have a very good bath, and then I try and have 2 days in bed. But somehow your adrenaline's moving, so you don't really.
Could you describe the room that you write in? What kind of a room do you need to write in? Have you created an environment especially for writing in?
Well, no, because at first what I used to write in was an second floor, the so-called living room, which has lots of, junk in and stuff. Because I like to have things, for instance, I've got a full-size dummy sitting in a chair. I've got blown-up photographs. I've got one of my grandsons made me a model of the Titanic, which is a tremendous help. I like that kind of help of things. But now, the room I write in, because I do it now onto this word processor thing, I just want to hide the word processor out of sight. I mean, having said that, my processor is so old that it's obsolete, and its prototype is in the Science Museum. It's quite big, and it's marvellous. In fact, about 2 years ago, it went vaguely wrong. It kept saying "what."
It kept saying what to you
What?
on the screen, yes.
On the screen, it said "what" with a question mark, which is quite clever when you
Sounded
think
quite good
about
if you
it.
could a built-in editor, really.
So by very laborious method, I found the man who made it, who designed it, and rang him. And it was very nice, but he could hardly talk for laughing, because he said it should have gone. It wasn't meant to last for, 15, 16 years. It should have been kaput about 10 years ago. So that wasn't much help. But anyway, and there was an occasion when there's a marvellous man who I knew as a little boy, who is now a great genius of whatever, cyberspace or something to do with word processors, and he came round. I happened to bump into him after years and years. He came round and he smoked a joint and waved it just over the top. And he said it should be all right now, and it was. I don't know how... Anyway, it just was. He didn't interfere with it in the slightest.
What was he, a faith healer or something?
I don't know what he was. He just did that, and it worked.
Do you have any rituals that you go through writing, apart from hanging on to this dinosaur of a computer?
Rituals. What do I do? I can't go upstairs. Say it's the first day or the fourth day when I've got my 4 pages. I can't go upstairs if there are dishes in the sink, or I haven't watered the plants. I have to do that. And then I can go upstairs, but it's only that. Sometimes if I get very, very stuck, particularly on the first page, I'll have a mug of whiskey. Well, not a mug, but I'll have
a shot.
I'll have a shot. Of course, years ago you could have a shot and another shot, and you'd be writing quite normally. Of course, now the danger is you write something, you have a shot, and it's total rubbish.
Yeah.
So, but as long as you stick to just that first bit, and then there's always something you can gain out of that. You can get something out of it, and then it'll be all right.
Do you subscribe to the theory that stimulants are going to help you be a better writer?
No, but I think you do need. I think the older you get, you do need something, because I think. I mean, it's no accident that, children are so imaginative and so-called lively as children. I mean, and young people. But as you get older, you get very steady and rather set, I think. And so you need something that goes like that, just momentarily.
Yeah, you said earlier that you often know what the ending of the book will be before you begin it, how you're going to finish a book. But how do you know when you've come to a full stop?
Well, I've got kind of a time thing in my head. It's most peculiar, because as I sort of know the ending anyway, and that's what I'm always working towards, just like that the first page is so important, the first paragraph is so important, the last paragraph is equally important, so you move towards that, and then it's almost because you know you've come to the end that the adrenaline goes even more than ever, and you can do a real, well, you hope, piece de resistance. You can really go. And the words of the endings, for instance, in the Every Man for Himself, I think the last lines are something on the horizon, a sort of puff of smoke from something or other. I had those words before I even started, and in the Crimean one, behind on the brow of the hill, myrtle arms out, went round and round like a bird above a rob nest. I'd got that before I even began the book. Those shot into one's head. Don't know why. So you know by about 2 pages towards the end, suddenly the clock starts saying, yes, it's not long now, move, and you can just move towards it.